Guys, why don't we start with this? Financial inclusion. What does it mean to you? And if we're talking about its importance, इसकी significance है क्या यार? क्या है मुल्क के लिए significance financial inclusion की क्या है? How about we start with Omer and then go to the rest?
Yeah, I think बहुत बड़ा फायदा है इसका. If you look at where Pakistan is in terms of comparing us with the countries in South Asia or even other countries in the world, we are very, very, very heavy on cash usage in the country. मैं आपको एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल देता हूँ. अगर आप देखें ना, जो करेंसी इन सर्कुलेशन होती है, जो फिजिकल कैश होता है, compared to the money supply, जो टोटल पैसा प्रिंट हुआ है by the State Bank of Pakistan, the developed countries in Europe and America, they are standing at about 5%. That's the ratio, cash in circulation as compared to the total money supply, 5%. India used to be at 15% before the demonetization drive. It went down to 10, but उनकी जो drive थी वो sustainable नहीं थी, so it's come back up to 15. Pakistan was approximately 8 years ago, Pakistan was about 20%. So 20% of the total money that we have in the country was actually cash in circulation. That number is now at 35%. We are being compared to the likes of Somalia, जहाँ पे, you know, we've all seen videos of truckloads of videos, truckloads of cash, physical notes being used to purchase, पता नहीं, food for one day or whatnot. That is the problem that we have in this country, although we don't face it. We are all too used to cash. हम cash इस्तेमाल करते आए हैं, सारी ज़िंदगी से कर रहे हैं. We like to have something tangible in our hands. But the problems that you asked about, the problems associated with cash are, you have all of this money in the country, you don't know who has it, you don't know where it came from, you don't know where it is being spent. There's money laundering, there is terrorist financing. ये जो हमें नज़ला मिल रहा है फैक्टिव का इस वक्त, वो क्यों मिल रहा है? We have bank accounts that people don't know कि किसके accounts हैं, वो कैसे operate हो रही हैं. We have an economy which is now so cash dependent and so addicted to cash that there's a pushback when we try to go out and do our digitization. When you go to the merchants in the country, वो आपका card नहीं लेना चाहते, वो आपको extra charge करेंगे on top if you want to pay by card. They have to pay their suppliers in cash. The suppliers have to pay the distributors in cash. The distributors pay the manufacturers in cash. That is the problem. The biggest problem, in my opinion, is when you have all of this cash circulating and you can't assess value being transferred, you can't tax. And as a result, मेरा मुल्क जो है वो revenue नहीं generate कर सकता. जो बाकी मुल्क हैं, वहाँ पे जब आपकी digitized, documented cash flows होती हैं, you can tax and you can collect revenue. That, I believe, is the single biggest issue in this country.
Hasan, your views?
So I'll go slightly tactical in terms of how larger banks and how HBL in particular is tackling this. So financial inclusion is probably at the heart of what HBL does today. Not just because it's a national agenda, but also because it fosters inclusive economic growth. I'll give you some examples. HBL and SAS partnered for this program called SAS Emergency Cash Program, the largest social safety net in Pakistan and in South Asia's history also, whereby we were able to disburse 175 billion rupees to over 12 million families in just 2 months. So when there is a will, there is a way. The will is there, not just at HBL, but at a lot of other esteemed organizations in Pakistan. Then the other point is inclusiveness. You've briefly discussed on the gender gap point also. On that front, there's also another program which HBL and SAS together are partnering up for called Kafalat program, whereby more than 3 million women will be beneficiary of this across the country. So, financial inclusion के बारे में तो उमर ने बता दिया. Organizations क्या कर रही हैं? For instance, what my organization is doing, this is what it is.
Rehan, क्या significance है financial inclusion की?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for inviting me. And what a fiery, passionate speech. It's hard to sort of match that passion. But I think there's a macro angle which Omer talked about, and there's a micro angle. So if you look at it from an individual perspective, and UN Charter also talks about giving everybody an equal chance. And what do they do with that option or a chance is their talent and their sort of fate or what they can do with it. Similarly, if you look at education, it has to be equal. The access should be everywhere. It's a basic right. Health, judiciary, so on and so forth. And in the modern sort of theory, and UN also now recognizes this, that the access to finance is also a basic right. And if you don't provide that basic right, you're actually limiting that person's ability or a chance to grow. And I'll give you two examples. SME, you've talked about. There are a lot of SMEs in Pakistan, and Pakistan is not unique. When in other countries, when access to finance to SMEs was not through formal channels. By the way, they have informal channels. So the huge pile of cash that Omer talked about, where does it go? It gets circulated. It's not, some of it may be in the safe houses and under the mattress, but a lot of it also gets circulated. So these SMEs do get loans from friends and loan sharks, but it is inefficient. So the growth that they have to achieve and the cost of capital that they have to pay, it doesn't sort of tally. That's why a lot of SMEs, other than many other sort of challenges, give up on the dream of growing because the growth capital that is available is too expensive. From an individual perspective, you talked about women, and it's a very important segment. And there's a lot of research that we have also done, and I think a lot of other institutions have also done. So the women empowerment, if you look at the subject and you sort of unfold that, what lies underneath that? What is the main lever? So the first lever is her independence or her ability to choose. And if it is cash, it is very difficult for her in a household because usually the cash is in the custody of the man of the house. That could be husband or father or brother or son, however the case may be. And I'm talking about, the women in, the rural segment and the non-urban areas, which, Hasan also talked about. So for them, agency is their way to any kind of work that they need to get done. So even if they are producing any handicraft or anything, in the end, the financials come through the man of the house, which basically, is a big, big loss in terms of her control on the resources. And there are a number of researches, a number of experiments which have proven that if women has the control of the finances, not only she's a good borrower, but she will actually spend that money on the development of the household rather than on chai pani and whatever the cultural sort of norm could be. And 48% or more, most of our population is deprived of that option. And that is why it is also important for individuals to gain that access. We see a lot of these underprivileged women or people from that segment, especially in the rural and agriculture sort of space, struggling with this. They can't put a finger on it that what is the issue, because there's so many social norms, that comes with this practice. But women who actually have a bank account and whatever they earn goes into that. There are empirical studies which basically show that the household actually, gets better in the economic sense. And that's the main reason why SARS disbursement is to the women. Yeah. It's a household support, by the way. It's not a support to the women. It's a household support, but it's given to the women because there's this theory.
Absolutely.
So for me and for Karandaaz, our objective is that while there's a macro, very important impact of financial inclusion, but it's basically about making people's lives better in financial inclusion, just like health and education, help improve the lives of people.
Innovation ki, I touched upon innovation, but there are some examples. I have to be candid in saying that, Omer, the work you guys have been doing for many years now in Easypaisa, being the pioneer when it comes to payment services, how do you see the importance of innovation? Are we overselling it? कि यार customer को पहचानो, customer को जानो, innovate करो ताकि masses को reach करें. And how do you approach that now in Easypaisa?
Thank you for the kind words, first of all. Innovation is, I think, it is still very, very, very important. However, innovation ko hum log jab baat karte hain, to a lot of people, when they hear this word, they misconstrue it. They feel that, we are talking about some new products or new services. Innovation doesn't necessarily have to mean new products or services all the time. Innovation can be in the processes that you have in going about and doing something. It could be an innovation within the organization itself in whatever work that you do. I think Pakistan ka ek masla ye hai, especially in the financial services sector, and all the players, all the commercial banks, all the microfinance banks, and all the incumbents who have been there, that we've been doing things for a very, very long time. We feel कि हाँ जी इसी तरह आगे लेके चलना है. Innovation, in my opinion, is coming in and saying, no, this needs to be broken down. जो customers हैं उनका behavior radically change कर रहा है. Exponential growth हो रही है उनका जो behavior change के अंदर. I can't identify with my youngest brother who is 8 years old because the choices that he makes and the decision he takes are something that my generation would not. Imagine for a second, ये जो generation COVID के अंदर से अभी जा रही है, the kids who are going through COVID right now, their learning, their education is all online. They have no aspiration or desire to actually go back to a campus and go to school or university. For them, going to a Stanford or a Harvard or an MIT doesn't matter anymore because they कहते हैं यार मैं रात को बैठ के कोर्स पढ़ लूँगा. Think about their entertainment options. मैं Netflix पे वीडियो देख लूँगा. Think about their food and whatnot. Restaurants, who the hell wants to go to restaurants anymore, yaar? Do you know the number of restaurants in Pakistan who have said, "Ji, we'll shut down our dining services and only focus on takeaway or delivery"? So, आपकी COVID की वजह से कुछ चीजें इतनी speed पकड़ गई हैं, पहले change हो रही थी. A lot of people I know personally in Karachi stopped. They actually sold their cars. A couple of years ago, they started selling their cars. उन्होंने कहा कि यार हम यहाँ से घर से उठ के दफ्तर तक जाते हैं ना, which is IH Chandigarh. Then we hand over the keys to a Pathan कि मेरी गाड़ी आगे पीछे करते रहो. पता चलता है एक शीशा भी गायब है, whatever. Bloody hell, I'll just take a Kareem yaar to work next day. So a lot of people have already moved from owning a car because that ownership doesn't do anything for them in the long run. The newer generation are not concerned with assets, ownership, titles. They are not. They're concerned with experiences. So, आप अपनी organization में, regardless of whatever you do, if it's financial services for us, if we understand that clearly and say, अच्छा ठीक है यार, if the experience is what these customers are asking for, then focus on the experience, because the cost of switching is absolutely zero. वो चले गए ज़माने जहाँ पे हम कहते थे हाँ मैंने एक कस्टमर को HBL में इसका अकाउंट खोल लिया, no offense यार, और अब ये कहीं नहीं जाएगा. ऐसा अब तो ख़त्म हो गया ना यार. The customer would turn around and open another account in a matter of seconds. So for the banking industry, for every player, I think we have to focus on that what matters. And innovation की जो आप बात कर रहे हो, it is all about, because again habits are changing constantly, so you keep understanding what's changing and how do you serve them. That's innovation to me.
Hasan, linking to what Omer said on customer experience. अब जो personalization या insights की बात की थी मैंने, I'm hearing, of course, a lot of your data is confidential. But this talk that I hear about HBL focusing on personalization, ये myth है, ये true है, marketing stunt है, या इसमें कुछ सच्चाई है? And if it's true, Are we really harnessing the power of what customers buy, how they interact with us, to actually offer them something better?
Okay, so we operate in a very regulated environment, right? So the use of information or data is extremely critical, as well as beneficial also if you use it correctly. Data-driven decision-making is something that lies at the core of our business. I'll give you an example. Let's say acquisition cost. Acquisition cost, if you see as an individual thing, is a cost to a P&L, right? It's an expense. However, what I've seen at HBL over the last 10 odd months, I cannot say that we're entirely into personalization. But on this bit, we look at acquisition cost in comparison to the lifetime value, right? So you see CAC and then you see the LTV. So CAC is the customer acquisition cost, LTV is the lifetime value. If the lifetime value of a customer is going to be higher than the acquisition cost, we're game. We're ready. Now, gone are the days when one size fits all was applicable even to banking products. Nowadays, customers are more aware, they're more enlightened of the financial offerings across different banks. So personalization and customization have to be in place. There's no denial. Then there's also another thing that we do a lot now. It's called predictive modeling. So from a predictive modeling perspective, that will not just help us in finding new ways to find or acquire new users, but also help us in retaining the current users that we have, thereby reducing the churns. Having said that, it's not a myth, but telcos are a little ahead compared to the banking industry in general.
Zabardast. How many of you have heard of Rast? अब सच सच बोलना है रमज़ान आने वाला है कितने लोगों को पता है what it actually is? अब हाथ उठाएं. I have a very truthful audience here, I must say. It's a good thing, Ali. You've collected, we need to have a data analysis on this. We've actually collected the right audience. Rehan, you've been working with SPP on Rast. यार इस Rast का जो रास्ता है ना ज़रा समझाएं हमको हमें कि ये है क्या? ये ऐप है जो हमने कहा यार डिजिटल एक ऐप है. What is it?
So, I'll just build a perspective of it, why Rast, and then also explain Rast. Rast, by the way, name, when it was being chosen, there were many different names. And the discussion was, कि वो नाम ऐसा होना चाहिए, which continues for a while and has a meaning as well. So it has a meaning of Rasta, it has a meaning of Brahe Rast, which is direct. It also has a meaning of Rahe Rast, which is the right way. So the hidden meaning is that there's a right way to make payments other than cash, which is the digital way. And this is the direct way, and if you adopt it, you're also sort of, so it's kind of a bit of emotional appeal that has been put in the name as well. Well, if you look at the Pakistan's financial industry, and if you analyze for last 10 to 12 years, what are the major developments when it comes to mobile banking or digital instruments, et cetera, we'll see that, there was ATM interoperability, which was introduced, quite a few years ago. That solves one issue. Then we had Easypaisa and Jazz Cash, and other sort of fintechs have also come into that. EMI licenses have been issued, PSO, PSP licenses have been issued. So we missed, in my opinion, a couple of tipping points. One tipping point was the card market could have really exploded. Just like in some of the countries, it was the cards who really ticked the box of financial inclusion and included everyone or most of the people. We could not ride on that wave. Then we had the mobile money operators, whatever the case may be. We did not sort of take that off as well. The market was focused initially through the agent banking, and now has shifted to sort of mobile banking as well. So we've also kind of missed that. Also, in some of the markets, you usually have one large player who then creates a big loop, which includes everyone. We also kind of missed that. And we are now in a situation where it is kind of a fragmented market. and I think rightly talked about the importance of partnership. Now, how the ecosystem is going to grow is if we have the partnerships. And interoperability, the account interoperability in true sense, which basically is for a customer, it really shouldn't matter who's my acquirer, where I have the account. It shouldn't matter where your account is. The treatment should be same, if not similar, or similar if not same, if I'm transacting or sending money within another account in the same bank, or I'm sending money to anybody outside to another bank. Just like in mobile networks, you really don't care where the other person is, as long as his phone is active or her phone is active in the world. It's the network's job to figure out where the number is, and it will connect. The same theory has emerged globally as well in payments, that it is not my concern, it should not be my concern where your account is. Which bank do you bank with? I just need to know an alias, a number, and I just send that money, and the system figures out where that bank is and where that account is. If anything, there is a debate that the account is actually a personal information, and it should not be revealed. Only if you want to, you should reveal that. So for that, the current interoperable solution that's available in Pakistan is through OneLink, the IBFT rails. Well, they're doing the sort of job, but from a futuristic point of view, they have a number of gaps. So RAST is basically, in essence, a push-based, real-time, interbank, account-to-account transfer system or a switch, which then also has some value-added features. Like it will launch, inshallah, by Q3 this year, a directory functionality, which basically allows, just like Easypaisa or in JazzCash, you can send money to just a mobile account number. Now HBL and any other bank will also be able to do that. Customers will be able to choose an alias, just like in PayPal. Business will be able to choose an alias, so payments could be received on an alias. It simplifies the matter, and right now, if you have to transfer money from one account to another account, and the banks are different, there's a whole sort of registration process and friction that needs to be removed. The other thing is the pricing. I know there are different views on the pricing that State Bank mandated last year on payments, interbank payments, and while the volume has risen a lot, which basically means that the customers have responded, but there's gamification and fraud also sort of creeping in. Having said that, the price should not be the reason customer preferring cash. That should be taken away, either by giving a value or lowering a price to the point that it does not matter. So that's the second thing, that RAST is going to address. The third thing is that, and I think there was a talk about it, the partnerships. So the banks and the fintechs have to connect. While the banks can hoard the space and say, okay, the fintech is only going to connect with me, and it is my will and my sort of decision that who then the fintech connects to. There's an alternative model, which is also prevalent in India, in which the fintechs actually connect with the central infrastructure, and then the infrastructure provides access, and then the whole sort of field of open banking, information sharing, et cetera, could be done. But of course, we need an infrastructure. And our regulator, and I think most regulators are conservative, wanted to take an approach where they have enough oversight and control over the infrastructure so that they're comfortable opening up, that kind of area as well. So RAST also opens that field. Another area which sort of RAST addresses is the government is not digitized when it comes to payments. So if you look at even government salaries, et cetera, and they are very reluctant to work with any private sector organization. I think the biggest sort of achievement is SAS working with the private sector. But other than that, they usually work with National Bank or the Bank of the Province, et cetera, et cetera. So RAST now is an intermediary in which the vision is that all government institutions will actually connect with RAST for any payment sending needs. It may also become the hub for receiving payments as well. That's a decision yet to be made, but at least for sending payments, it will be the hub. And imagine there's so much inefficiency in government payments, which will be actually taken care of. But in the sort of in a nutshell, Rust is an interoperable payments platform. There is already a platform, and we take a lot of flack of why do you need another platform. The issue with that platform is it's owned by 11 big banks. It does not allow others to bring in the demand and needs what they want to do. This platform will have a user council at the start, and of course, gradually the governance will be all inclusive. That's the roadmap, which will basically means that regardless of if you're the bank or if you're the fintech, if you're the challenger or the incumbent, you know, whatever need you, whatever sort of expectation you have from the payments, as long as you have a business of payments, you know, you sit on that council and you can actually define the roadmap of the development as well.
Fantastic. Best of luck with this. It's genuinely exciting. Closing comments. What thoughts would you guys want to leave the audience with? Whether it's around financial inclusion, what your institutions are doing. It's seldom that so many people get together in a room together, especially now in COVID. I think most of us are seeing each other after a long time, although we work together for a long time. Omer, what do you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think the financial services sector of where we all belong, we've been doing a lot, and there are a lot of initiatives which are now on the table. A lot of new services and products have been introduced. It's really up to the customers now. There was a question that was asked of me the other day also, कि यार uptake या services की usage जो है वो क्यों नहीं होती है? One big reason is that people are very used to doing whatever they have been doing for many, many years. So you mentioned, you know, the cost of acquisition and acquiring customers and then trying to retain them over time and churn, etc. I think the first leap needs to be taken by the customers out there. You guys really need to see कि यार आप लोग जो आज financial services इस्तेमाल करते हो, I don't care, आप cash use कर रहे हो, आप किसी बैंक का account use कर रहे हो, आप debit card use कर रहे हो, आप internet banking use कर रहे हो या mobile wallet use कर रहे हो, आप ये सोचो कि जी इसमें मेरे pain points क्या हैं, मुझे क्या friction points मिल रहे हैं, and how can I improve them? Look at the alternatives in the market and try out those services. So for a company like Easypaisa, you know, we have an app which is probably the largest app in Pakistan in terms of the number of users who are using it. We've pumped in tons of technology behind it. Our shareholders, which is Ant Financial and Telenor Group, there's heavy, you know, about $220 million of investment which has been made over the last 3 years. We actually, and then जो भी आप लोगों को मसले आ रहे हैं, you actually reach out and say, look, these are the problems I'm facing, so that those problems can be addressed and tackled and then be worked upon to improve services. I think चीजें इधर से ही बदलेंगी. जब आप कहीं पे जाते हो, always keep in mind, when you carry cash, you're carrying some value with you. Right? And start thinking from that angle. Why are you carrying cash to begin with? ये cash जो है इसको print करने में भी पैसे लगे हुए हैं. वो आप ही के taxes से जाते हैं. वो मेरे taxes से जाते हैं. Automatically कोई print करके नहीं दे देता. The amount of money that the state bank spends on printing cash in a year, it's about 20 billion rupees. इस पैसे से क्या-क्या नहीं हो सकता. So just again, we may belong to the same financial sector, but to be honest, when I look at my colleagues from Mobilink or from HBL, we don't compete with each other as such. Our actual competition is cash out there.
Okay, I can't agree more with Omer when he says कि अब कुछ customers पे भी है. You know, there's a lot of investment that's been taken in building the technological infrastructure. Now it's up to people to decide. From a bank's perspective, I think it's time for channel migration. What we've seen in COVID, and I don't mean to say that it's a blessing in disguise, but the digital transformation efforts for all the banks during the last 1 odd years has been phenomenal. You see growth rates of over 100%, 2x transaction value growth, 3x transaction. Banks were not used to it. Banks were generally used to, let's say, moderate 2-digit growth. So from that perspective, channel migration pe jo business kar sakta hai, wo to ho gaya. Now we want something, and even significant marketing efforts have been put in there. So I'll not give an example of HPL, but rather quote an example of Easypaisa here. The fact that there was a campaign on Easypaisa, right? Yeah. Whereby pay your Eid on Eid using your app. Phenomenal concept at a time when every time I'm going to the ATM taking out cash, or even if I'm doing a cash transaction, I'm putting a sanitizer on top to clean it. Right? So this is the time.
मतलब शादी पे भी जो gifts देते हैं cash वो भी अब digitally.
Absolutely. So customers have to also break some mental blockages that they have.
Good point.
And that's about it.
Rehan, what do you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a feeling of fatigue from an investment side. Kab aayega result? And I think the regulators are also trying to sort of support. I think the government now has to step in. The other departments of the government, especially, the taxation, and there is a provincial taxation sort of subject as well, and, federal as well. Nadra has to now make a decision, or the government has to make a decision, कि अब इस asset का क्या करना है. I think Fawad Chaudhary was talking about it very rightly. कि we have this data, अब क्या करना क्या है उसका? I mean, how do you utilize it? Because, a financial institution cannot leverage on that data and make an informed decision. What good is that data? So then we can crib about it, and we can't just hold the private sector to keep investing and change customer behavior. It is not going to happen. So I think the government has to step in. Time and again, we hear policies which are contrary to the work that financial inclusion actually requires. And there has been some leading work which has been done by the Punjab government of removing, part of GST to encourage payments. We actually have to make digital payment more lucrative. The cash is so easy. I go to ATM, I get new notes, they smell nice, and I give it to somebody, and the transaction is done. So the cost is definitely there, but the visible cost is actually nil. So from that perspective, unless the government steps in, I hope we are not that country who waits for an exogenous shock. There has been talk of demonetization and positive impact of that on financial inclusion. The jury is still out what happened in India and some of the other countries. But I think that's where the government should be sensible, and some of the other sort of parties which actually are creating a barrier, or if not barriers, slowing down, they should actually, put their act together, and there should be an interdepartmental, intergovernment, interagency, whatever so you want to call it, where MYT, the taxation authorities, central bank, definitely, Ministry of Finance, come together. Yeah. There is a national agenda of financial inclusion, but it is only the state bank who actually leads that and sort of, consider that as their agenda. The other agencies are sort of just doing their job. That's the fact. So I think from that perspective, I think if we put our act together, I think then it will be a great support for the banks and mobile money operators to fill the gap, the demand, that they're waiting and they're sort of, want the demand to be created. That demand could be created through those measures as well, and we should not undermine those measures.
I think it's a good point to stop our discussion. Guys, it's been a pleasure. It's great seeing you guys again. Thank you to the audience, extremely patient. Ali, thanks a lot for the kind invite. Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.